So welcome everyone. Hope everyone is doing fine and safe and healthy in the current pandemic, and you are safe in the comfort of your home or office as you attend this session and the second version of the Open Data Conclave. So we at the Indian School of Business, the Bharti School of Public Policy, Indian School of Business had organized the first Open Data Conclave last year in September 2000, and we are organizing the second version this year. We really wanted to host this event in person with a lot of people and physical networking in Delhi, but the situation still has not gotten pretty well, which is actually creating us the option of making this event still on a virtual format. So let me start by giving a quick overview of what we do here at the India Data Portal team. So India Data Portal is a public access open data portal that we have developed at the Bharti Institute of Public Policy at the Indian School of Business, and it focuses primarily on two broad aspects: on agriculture and rural development, and making the data available openly. By openly, what we mean is that there's a lot of this data that we are taking is already available on the government website, but they are available in a format which is not readily available for analysis. And either they are in PDF files that requires long amount of hours of people to go and scrape the data or transform it into machine readable format for analysis, or you have to go through multiple drop-down lists to get a very granular data. So this portal has been launched in January 2020. So we are almost completing about 2 years. In the recent focus in the last 6 months, what we have done is that we have taken the data to a very granular level. And before we talk on the granular level, let me also tell you that the India Data Portal is available in 6 regional languages other than English. It is available in Hindi, Oriya, Bengali, Telugu, Marathi, along with English. And we have a lot of data sets, about close to 50 data sets available on the portal that you can access and get view of it. One of the things that we have seen with a lot of people, particularly journalists and researchers, when they're working with data, is that a good amount of state level data is often been collected by the central ministries or the state government, and availability of state level data is sort of good in India. Even if you look at the most solid source of data, that is the Ministry of Statistics, the Ministry of Statistics has actually state level data for the various indicators. But when we go to the sub-state level data, I think that is where the challenge comes. We see that district level data becomes a challenge, and going further down on the tehsil or a block or at a city or village level, the challenges become even more. And there are certain data sets that we have tried to put in the public domain on the India Data Portal, which are at a very granular level. And the last 5 or 6 months of work that we have done has been focused on that. So we have made a lot of data which are from the agriculture marketing, the AgMarkNet data, the Mandi data available, the agriculture census data available at a market center, the agricultural wages at a particular center, that data is available at a market center level. For the Manrega employment and the investment in Manrega, we have a very granular level of data at a tehsil and a block level. There are data sets from the census, which is again available at a village and a town level, which is available with the census. We are working on bringing that data available. A very interesting project that we are working on is also to make the data of the census from 1950 till 2000 till 1991 available in machine readable format. This data is not available in machine readable format even with the Register General of India, and only the hard copy reports are there in scanned format. So we are transforming that data and putting them in public domain by the end of the year. That should also be there. but then a lot of challenges still remain when we look into granular data. These are only some of the sectors that we have been looking into. But when we talk about granular data, the challenges remain, and we are not alone in the ecosystem who are working on that. So with this in mind, we will have the discussion around the access of data and how we can have granular level data available for people in the ecosystem. That will be the primary focus of our discussion today. So let me take the honor of first introducing the speakers and the panelists for the session today. So we are joined by Mr. Sitansu Mohapatra. He is from the Open Data Group at data.gov.in, which is the first site. When the moment we hear about open data, the first thought that comes to any Indian's mind is data.gov.in. So he is our first speaker and panelist. Next, we are joined by Iro. He is from the Manipur Frontier, joining us from Manipur. He's a journalist there, has been working on various database stories. He joins us from there. We have another journalist, Nidhi, from Gaon Connection. Gaon Connection is doing very solid work at the grassroots level, where a lot of the central government institutions or state government machinery cannot go and collect data, and they are actually conducting surveys and collecting data from that aspect and making them available on their portal. We like to hear from their experiences. Soumya joins from NITI Aayog. Soumya Guha joins from NITI Aayog. NITI Aayog has done excellent work on measuring each of the states on the 16 different SDG goals. And Soumya have been one of the pivotal person who have been working on that effort. As you go on and create an index like the SDG index on 16 different pillars, there are several challenges that you have to face, and he will be talking us through some of those challenges and other stuff that they do on a day-to-day basis with data. Last but not the least, we have Rakesh, our old friend of ISB. He was there in the last Open Data Conclave in 2000, and he's a regular speaker in several ISB events. They are doing excellent work with the Telangana government, Telangana Open Data portal that they are putting up. And he has a lot of interesting stories and experiences to share. So he also joined by him. And he is from faculty. Sorry, I forgot to give that. So I would like to request now, Sitansu, if you can start. You can start with I only gave a one-liner introduction of you. So maybe you can also give a bit more introduction about yourself and the work you are doing. It will be good if you can limit your opening remarks to about 10 minutes for each of the speakers. So Sitansu, over to you.
Thank you, Avik. Am I audible? So,
yes.
Yeah. So I just want to share a small presentation also related to our work confined to states also. We have done some part of our work with states, with the state framework. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sitansu. I'm part of Open Government Data Platform India for the last 6 years. So I was part of this program, and Government of India has started this program from 2012. So I think my screen is visible to all.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think the audience here is quite learned, and they know what is open data and how open data functions in India. So we have started this mission since 2012 with a policy called National Data Sharing and Accessibility Policy. So this policy is notified by Government of India in the year 2012, and the basic objective is to release government-owned data in an open machine-readable format. Those could be used, reused, and redistributed the by the citizen, by the community, by other stakeholders, by startups and others. And whatever data Government of India is collecting by using public fund must be released in open format for everyone's use. So that is the basic thumb rule of the policy, and data.gov.in is part of that policy itself. So the policy itself says that there should be a central portal, and that portal should host all the data related to the central government ministry and department. So this policy is basically meant for central government ministry and department. And these are the basic stakeholders, like Ministry of DST, the Department of Science and Technology had drafted the policy, and after that, Ministry of Electronics and IT, along with National Informatics Center, has taken this policy to implement it. And on the same lines, data.gov.in was designed, and gradually ministry, department, and states are part of this. However, as I told you, this policy is meant for central ministry and departments, but states are free to either adopt this policy, or else they can create their own policy. So accordingly, many states have adopted the central policy. If you say Assam, a couple of other not even Sikkim has their own policy. However, this policy is on the basis of the central policy. Odisha has their own data policy. Similarly, Telangana has their own data policy. Madhya Pradesh has their own data policy. However, they have done some changes in the central policy and adopted that. Maharashtra has created their own policy. So accordingly, these states have created their own policy, and a couple of them have started their own data portal also. And I know Rakesh is here. Rakesh is one of the pioneers in this, and he has worked for the last 10 years at least in this domain, and he has done it quite he's one of the leaders in this. If we are talking about the state policies and state data portals. So is this is again the key stakeholders for NDSAP, public at large. Anyone could be. These are from the user side, developers, startups, data enthusiasts, activists, data journalists, NGOs, researchers, academia, everyone under this domain who could use this data set for whatever purpose they want. To make this a legal, to find this through uh, just to give a better legal framework to the user, we have designed a license structure also around this dataset that is called the Government Open Data License. So this license gives freedom to users to use these dataset available on data.gov.in to use whatever purpose they want. They don't have to ask the government or concerned ministry department, and that includes commercial use also. Let's say somebody is using this dataset for commercial purpose, they are free to do that. They don't have to ask the government. However, they have to use the terms and condition of the license, and that says you have to mention the source ministry only. That is the only thing that you have to do. So this is a structure of the ecosystem where we have data.gov.in. We have sister portals like community engagement portal, community.data.gov.in. We have a dedicated event portal where we do all our activities like our hackathons, challenges, and other things that should through event.data.gov.in. And we have a dedicated visualization engine inbuilt, which any user can create a visualization by using data, their own data, or else data from data.gov.in. This is a very primary visualization engine where you can create a number of charts and you can embed in your website, or else you can download a PNG or JPG and embed in your reports and other things. And at the same time, we are offering SaaS instances. So the SaaS instances are basically software as a service, where any of these states or ULB, we have started with states and ULBs, urban local bodies could adopt and create their own portal. And data.gov.in PMU is providing this free of cost, and NIC is also providing the infrastructure free of cost. So the concerned state or ULB has to only maintain the data and the policy that they are working on. Again, this is again a bigger view where all the stakeholders are in place. So this is the homepage of data.gov.in. So till date, we are. This is not a mandate of data.gov.in or the OGDPMU. However, as we are in the ecosystem, so we are offering this SaaS instances to the states and ULBs free of cost. So with this, we have started. The first ULB was onboarded was Surat Municipal Corporation in around 6-7 years back, and the first state onboarded was Sikkim. So once Sikkim has created their own data policy, they were part of this, and we have at that time there was no SaaS, but we have created a separate instance for them. Gradually, we have converted that into a SaaS instance, and other states can also adopt that. So till date, we have Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Kerala, Odisha, Sikkim, and Punjab has adopted this SaaS instances, and they have created their own platforms. And the technology part is managed by NIC. However, the concerned data sets are managed by the states. And as we have created a separate instance for Smart City Mission, and this is again managed by Ministry of Urban Affairs and Smart City Mission. So the surat.data.gov.in has merged into this portal, and now this service is provided to all 100 smart cities. And as I told you, Smart City Mission is managing this, and gradually we are trying to source data from Indian Urban Data Exchange, that is again maintained by Ministry of Urban Affairs. Those dataset will also come to this portal. The work is on. I think in near future we can find all those datasets also available through open format in this platform. This is again some statistics. We have more than 5 lakh plus datasets that includes central and state data, where we have very less amount of data from the state and more data from the central ministry and department. We have more than 30 million views on the datasets itself, and 8.9 million times these datasets were downloaded, and more than 1,14,000 APIs are offering. We are offering more than 1,14,000 APIs out of these datasets, and around 376 chief data officers we have created across the country. That includes around 104 from central and more now from the states, because states are more active. Out of these 5 states, at least Tamil Nadu and Karnataka is quite proactive, because they have created separate PMU in the state level, and they are quite proactive, and they have created CDOs from all their line ministries, so that more granular data from this state would be available. So this is one of the awards that we are providing to states and ministries. This is called Open Data Champion Award. Every 2 years, this is part of the Digital India Award award system, and we are providing state and as well as ULBs and ministry. We are giving this award. Now, we are offering 3 models to the states actually. One is either they can create their own data portal by using the OJD SaaS instances, or else if they want, they could directly contribute to the central platform data.gov.in as one of their CDO, or else the state can have exclusive data portal with maintenance responsibility on data to OJD PMU. These are the 3 uh, offerings we are providing to the state. We have created a framework also for this, where what should be the governance structure. We have decided the governance structure. We have put an implementation strategy also, where we have proposing them for nodal officers, where the senior government officials could be the nodal officer for ministry departments, and they could drive that for that particular department in the state, and they could create contributors under them who could directly contribute data. Similarly, we are also offering for we are also suggested for open data cells in each and every department. That cell is responsible to clean data, to collect data, and to compile data and to upload data also, and make them convertible, and make it sure that these data sets are machine readable. As per the metadata and other standards, we have a particular schema and guidelines also for that for the states, and we also offer various stakeholders engagement and dissemination methods with stakeholders in the state. We have also defined the onboarding system for the states, where a state has to create a governance structure in the state itself first, and they could come to us for create the SaaS instance, to generate the SaaS instance, where NIC is part of that system as the technology provider. Here we have some. I just want to show this governance structure, where we include a state steering committee. We generally suggest this with the help of the chief secretary, principal secretary, IT, principal secretary, science and technology, planning and coordination. Where generally in states, if you see, these departments are basically dealing with the data part, the planning and coordination, statistics wing, or planning and coordination and information technology. So that's why this kind of committee we generally suggest to the states, so that this data could be managed properly, and the state has a stake in that. And we also suggest to states to create a state PMU that will drive this activity. the data providing activity, and they could be the connecting link between NIC, the technology group, as well as the state data provider department and ministries. These PMUs are basically responsible for managing all the training activity, all the coordination activity across the state, across the departments. This is again a form that I just want to showcase, and this is the flow that we generally do. We follow the gatekeeping system in data.gov.in, where generally the PMU creates the CDO, and that is with the Government of India or government state government notification. That once the CDO is created, the CDO can create contributors under him, and these contributors can contribute data, and the data could come to the CDO. This is again the bigger flow, the bigger structure where both these platforms are there, the state instances as well as the central portal, where the CDO can create the contributors generally contribute data that comes to the CDO. Once the CDO approves that with proper metadata and other things, that comes to the PMU publish them, and this data directly publish on the state portals. And let's say this same data is also available on the central portal is a separate instance, separate dashboard, a state dashboard. And similarly, we are offering similar dashboards to the CDO and to the contributors to check their status, the data status. And apart from that,
We're at
we are a
time,
package.
so
Yeah. Just give me 2 minutes. I'm just just in the last 1 or 2 slides. So here also we have a mechanism where the CDO get flagged off if the data is not updated in a timely manner. These are some of the roles and responsibility of the chief data officer, where they check the data, they will make it sure that these data sets don't contain any PII, PI, and those could be used in a proper way. So these are some of the benefits that we are offering to the state if they adopt the SaaS instances. First of all, it's free of cost. All the technology is free, and they could contribute more granular data in this manner. That is from my side of it. Thank you.
yes, thanks, Sitansu. That is very interesting to hear about the framework that NIC is providing to the states that they need to onboard on an open data platform. This is very important to have a framework that they can take and customize to their needs. I think this is a very good start that NIC is providing that from Central Ministry. We'll discuss more on that as we go along. So can I now invite Iro to make his opening remarks on his experiences with data, any interesting stories you want to share, anything, Iro?
Yeah, thank you, Sir Avik. So I'm Iro. I am currently working as a sub-editor at the Frontier Manipur. It's a news portal based in Imphal, Manipur. So as you all know, Manipur is a conflict zone. So when we say we all know the importance of data in today's day and age. So, but the difficulties that the state authority face is that since Manipur is a conflict zone, they have some difficulties in collecting the data from the grassroots level. For example, the census for 2011 has not been released for Manipur. There are some conflicts on the number of population and as such in some parts of the state. So as such, it has not been released officially. So actually, we don't know the exact number of population in Manipur. Some experts have estimated that it is above, a little over 30 lakhs or so. So just to highlight the difficulties of the authorities in collecting the data, the authentic data. So we as a journalist in working in Manipur, we have to rely mostly on the data provided by the state authority on each and every field. If we want to do a story about, say, for example, there is a big push to set up oil palms, the palm the palm oil, these plantations in Manipur, in Northeast, and particularly in Manipur. So we have, the government has given out some data about the areas they are going to cover, and as such, so we have to dig in, and talk to experts and as such, and if they have any data or anything to support or to to help in our story. So that is a kind of that is how we as a journalist write stories based on data itself. So and since I think most of the people in Manipur don't really understand the importance of data. They, I mean, for example, the COVID-19, the most of the stories of COVID-19 since the beginning of the pandemic in March 2020, the headline has always been about the number of new cases or deaths and as such. So people, I think people are now realizing the importance of data a bit, since especially, during this pandemic, because they get a sense of this, where this pandemic is heading based on those reports. But unfortunately, the state provide only data that are the daily reports, like the number of new cases and deaths and as such, and the number of tests also. So they up to August 2021, the state government of Manipur did not provide the number of the positivity rate or the number of cases for different districts. So it was very difficult to get those number for those districts, different districts. So we have to rely on our own sources, the chief medical officer of the this thing of the different district hospitals, and we have to rely on those sources, and we have to collect and set up our own data. And and one of the most important thing is that we don't have, particularly in Manipur, we don't have this what do you say, the what do you call it, the that the dashboard, yeah. So, well, in its absence, we don't know where we are heading. Actually, we don't have the graphs and all. So that is the one of the the thing we as a journalist have a responsibility to try and to get a sense of where the pandemic is heading, and to disseminate that information to the public. So we calculate it ourselves. So we calculated ourselves, and we had to, one sec. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry. So we had to calculate it ourselves for, let's say, a week, and then we have to do a story on that, so that we can share to the people where the pandemic is heading and as such. And another thing is that some states in Northeast, particularly Nagaland and Meghalaya, I think they have a better sense of this data management. So they have been, particularly for COVID-19, so they have been regularly updating the data for different districts and as such. And yeah, so and another thing is that we the data from the granular level, as you have mentioned, the district commissioner of the particular districts give out these containment zones. They announce the containment zones whenever someone is tested COVID positive. So we have to rely on those orders, the containment zone orders, to get a sense of where everyone the infection has been has taken place. Yeah, so that is what we are facing, and I hope that as far as I know, we don't have any data policy. So I hope that people do realize the importance of data, and the authority, the government also, and they work on it and have a uh, and provide the data freely to the people, so that we can we not the stakeholders, including the journalists, can uh, uh, guess any, I mean, if we want to do a story about some particular topic, so that we can authenticate that, I mean, the data, we can use it, use those data, and we can work on it. Yeah, so thank you.
So thanks, Hiro. That was really interesting to hear about it, and believe me, Manipur is not the only one which is in that phase where the importance of data and making it openly available is not completely appreciated. There are several states where you see this is the status. I think leaving out 5 or 6 states which are on the forefront of sharing data. Some that Sitansu shared with us, some that Rakesh will also talk with us. I think most of the other states are in this form. So as you correctly told, in the absence of a proper website or dissemination policy or dissemination portal of data, people are reliant primarily on connections, whether you know an officer or not, how well you know them, whether they will give the data to you. So you're at the mercy of people for reporting needs. So let us hold on to that. I think this is a problem that we often hold a lot of our training sessions with journalists, that many journalists report about similar issues, and this is a common issue that we face across the board in India, which is one of the effort that India Data Portal has to overcome such issues and make data publicly available. So that's the important issue. Let us discuss on that as we go on to the discussion. So let me go to Shomo and hear about what NITI Aayog is doing from the SDG index part, because it's an index which has been there for about 3 years now, I guess.
Yes.
And so hear about his journey. If you want to share your screen, feel free to do that.
Thank you, Avik. Thank you, Sitansu. Thank you, Hiro. As Avik said, I work at the SDG vertical at NITI Aayog, and NITI Aayog is the nodal agency for adoption and monitoring of the Sustainable Development Goals framework at the national level and localizing the same at the levels of states and union territories. So this entails not only engagement and coordination with all the states and union territories, but also the ministries as well. So as Avik mentioned, the SDG India Index, the first edition was released in 2018 because the aim was quite singular, which is to bring the SDGs to the policy table at the levels of states and union territories. And therefore, measuring their progress and ranking them towards achieving the various goals and targets of the 2030 agenda was seen as an effective measure. Now, I'm very happy to also say that the response so far across the 3 years, it has been very encouraging. And especially, this year's index saw some unprecedented focus and coverage, not only from the media on the results, but also from the highest offices of state governments, including chief ministers and chief secretaries. State governments and union territories are our primary stakeholders. So their feedback is very important in this process. So when we started off in 2018 to sort of formulate the index, we had certain constraints as well. So all sort of national indicator frameworks on the SDGs, they are guided by something called the MOSPI's National Indicator Framework, which has been an evolving document since its inception. It used to have 306 indicators and 302 and 295. So our aim was to get, sort of collect and amalgamate data available for all states at the same time, and then come out with an index which captures progress. So which is why the baseline report in 2018, due to a lot of data constraints, had 62 indicators and it covered 13 goals. And subsequently, we have developed and refined it further with version 2 having around 100 indicators. The coverage of targets increased, and with version 3, we had around 115 indicators, which covered 70 targets. Now, as I said, the feedback from states and UTs have been very interesting, because once the data is put in the public domain, there's a lot of media scrutiny as well on the performance of the states and on each of the sectors, the vast and expansive sort of sectors the 16 SDGs cover. So our work practically begins right from the time we start receiving feedback from on official letterpads from chief secretaries, and therefore it has been very interesting to also observe the different levels of maturity the data systems are, something which Avik alluded to as well. It's very different in various parts of the country, with a lot of southern and western states leading that, and certain states which are still sort of catching up. And one of the things that we also do is that we partner with the UN Resident Coordinator's Office. So the other sort of technical feedback that we receive are from the UN agencies, which also have presence at the level of states. And recently, what we also have started doing is we have hosted around 21 national workshops. 21 workshops at the level of states in the state capitals, closed door workshops with various departments to discuss their data challenges, their sort of agreements and disagreements on many of the indicators that we use to benchmark their performance and so on and so forth. One thing that we maintain is that from 2018 to 2021, the third edition, we've been successively reducing the kind of scheme level indicators that we have been using and moving towards outcome-based indicators. So that also means that all our data sources are national level data sources from ministries or ministry surveys to kind of ensure interstate comparability. But what it also means that there are many national surveys. Avik mentioned that how at the level of states we are doing fine, and which is true, but there are still many important indicators that do not capture other smaller states. A common example would be what the sample registration system does, and with their maternal mortality rate indicators. So many of the smaller states are not captured in those specific indicators. Similarly, with the NFHS as well, when we look down for certain states and certain districts in the country, there are many unweighted samples which can't be kind of represented or reported in our national reports. We've also tried to, because with each edition, the number of indicators have also increased with sort of availability of data which was not previously available. Our indicator sets also keep changing, but our aim primarily has been to ensure that we've been using the latest data sets. So for example, the latest edition, 80% of the indicators are sourced from the last 3 years since 2018-19 onwards. And what we also kind of do is, once our draft framework is set up, we send out the same framework to all the state governments, simultaneously host workshops and get feedback from them. The aim of our exercise has primarily been that to not only sort of look at domain-wise the sectoral challenges with the state is facing, let's say in health, education sector, but also to look inwards within the statistical system as well. And many of the states have now created many SDG aligned subcommittees and working groups which work specifically in this domain. This year we did something of interest probably to the audience here, is that we along with a request from the Ministry of Development of the Northeastern region, instituted something called the Northeastern Region District SDG Index. And so 3 years of experience working with state data, and then when we stepped into this, we realized the kind of challenges that we had to face, especially considering that this was based on the 120 districts of the Northeast. And one clear thing that we saw was, because it was an index for the districts, it had to be high frequency indicators, but at the same time there was several data challenges at the level of districts. So our indicator set was smaller with 84 indicators, and we did something which we usually don't do, which is take up a lot of state department indicator sources. And we initially started off with the aim of covering 120 districts, but we ended up with covering 103 districts, because for many of the districts in some of the states, we put a cutoff on the amount of state data that was available, and if it wasn't available, then it was just not feasible to accommodate that within our methodology, because we required data on each of these indicators. And as Iro was saying, Manipur is a case in point where of the 16 districts, we could only include 9 of them. And we worked very closely with the planning department officials there. Census data related, population data related challenges were there, because many of our SDG indicators, apart from being household level indicators, are also on various infrastructure facilities, which are usually per XYZ population, could be 10,000 population, lakh population, and so on and so forth. And one of the things that we also sort of quickly realized is that so while you have a lot of the southern and the western states who have invested a lot in technology and also training their human resources, in many other states, technology is also kind of sometimes seen as a panacea to solve many of these problems. But I think one of the major challenges, I would say, especially in the states in the east, in the northeast region of the country, is basic capacity of officials on the ground, who not only are part of inputting this data, but also to analyze and to make sense of useful information which can sort of inform policy making. I'll stop here and we'll continue the discussion. Thank you, Avik.
No, that is very, very interesting. So I didn't know about this Northeast region index, which was really nice to know about. So is the report in public domain?
It is in the public domain.
So
and what we also do, Avik, is that we also have a dashboard for each of these indices where we put out all the raw data. It's available, freely downloadable, along with the metadata, etc. as well.
Yes. So I know about the aspirational district, which has been running for quite some time. But they only cover the aspirational district. But this Northeast region index, where you're covering all the district in Northeast, is really good, because there is a lot of development needs in this district, and if such focus efforts can be made, it will be really good. So I'll hold on to some of the questions. I have a lot of questions on that, on the data quality that you touched upon, but I'll hold on the questions for later as we go into a discussion. So now let's go to Nidhi. She and her organization Gaon Connection is doing a lot of good work. What I think is like the challenges that other people have been talking about. I think they have solved some of those challenges silently over the years. I am very impressed with Gaon Connection and the work they do. Big fan of this organization. Nidhi, over to you to talk about the work you do and how you are managing.
Thank you so much, Dr. Avik, for making us a part of this data conclave, so that actually we can put some of the viewpoints of rural India, where 2 out of 3 Indians live, and we really don't know what's usually going around in rural India. So just a little bit about Gaon Connection, if I can tell. It's basically a rural media platform. We are bilingual, both Hindi and English. We work both in audio, video, and text format. And it was started in December 2012. We should in a year complete 10 years of Gaon Connection. And most of our work is centered around stories from rural India. We have a huge network. I just want to take a minute to describe what is our model of Gaon Connection. It's a very different way of how a media organization works. We have this set of community journalists, and we have this network of about some 400 districts we've already covered with our network, where we have these community journalists who are not really so-called trained journalists who've come out of journalism schools, but these are all local, village, small town boys, girls, teachers, housewives, or any other, some dukanwala or somebody whom we've actually trained over a period of time in mobile journalism. And these are the people who are our eyes and ears to the ground, and they are the ones who feed us information from different parts of rural India. Now, why data becomes very important for us is that because these people are spread across some 400 districts of the country, and a lot of times when they send us stories, we don't have data at that level. If I want to talk about, say, sewage polluting a particular pond or a couple of water bodies in a particular panchayat, it's very difficult to get any information on, okay, what is the amount of sewage that is possibly flowing into. Forget about saying treated, untreated. I wouldn't even know what is the amount of sewage that's flowing into. So that somewhere also weakens the stories, like what Iro was also talking about. A lot of times it becomes like, lack of evidence is actually not evidence of lack, but that's how the stories are taken, that, if we put the story out, some government official or somebody else will tell us that, but how can you say this? How do you prove this? So what we actually, after 8 years of journalism and realizing that not enough focus is there on rural India and nobody really even bothers to collect first-hand data from rural India, we just decided that we will take a plunge and we will start conducting these face-to-face surveys. And these are, scientifically sampled surveys. These are not like randomly we just go and talk to people. So we have a team, a survey team, and they do proper sampling, and we decide why we will select a particular block or a particular village and which household we will go and interview. So last year during the pandemic, as you would all know, when the lockdown was announced and we had these millions of migrant workers we saw walking on the roads, the only story we knew was till the time they left our city boundaries. What happened to these millions of migrant workers when they reached their hometowns, their villages, there's a complete information blackout. We have no clue what happened. And I think that's where we stepped in and we said, now is the time that we really need to record this, that what's happening to these people who've returned to their villages and otherwise who live in rural India, what's happening to rural India during the pandemic. So last year, during the summer, in June, we actually did a national survey. I think we covered about 20 states and 3 union territories with a sample size of about 25,000 respondents. And we use these network of our community journalists through mobile phones, smartphones, and an app. We conducted this face-to-face survey across these states in India to just understand what's happening in rural India during the pandemic. So we've, I mean, all our reports, if you see our website, ruraldata.in, that you have these are open access reports that we have put out. You can look at these reports with all the graphs, data, everything in a very, I think, user-friendly manner. We put out to tell that, okay, I mean, we figured something like some 58% of migrant workers are below 35 years of age. We really, I mean, these are the small insights that our survey gave us, that how many of them got Manrega work when they went back to their villages. Will they come back to the cities? How much do they earn when they work in the cities? How many months do they migrate? How many farmers were able to sell their harvest during the lockdown? So these kind of different things. That was one of the surveys they did. And the second survey, again, we did is around the farm laws, like all these farmer protests, which has been going on for so long. So we said, okay, let's do another survey to find out from farmers across the country. This was a rapid survey. This was not a national survey. I think we covered about 16 states and with about, I think, over 5,000 respondents, because we wanted to do it in a matter of like 10, 12 days, because it was a hot topic and we wanted to put it out immediately. And we interviewed all these farmers to find out, okay, why are they against the farm laws? What is their perception? How many of them are able to sell their crops at MSP? Which crop sells at what rate? What are the challenges? So this is the kind of, then we did another survey last year in December, because we knew the COVID vaccine was coming. And we wanted to find out, okay, what is is rural India prepared for COVID vaccine? Will they pay for the vaccine? How much will they pay? Do they trust the government vaccine, or would they trust a multinational giving them the vaccine? I mean, different kinds of things we tried covering. So these are the basically 3 surveys that we conducted. And I think from our side, we're trying to plug in this huge gap that exists in first-hand data from rural India. We are a small organization, but we're just trying to do whatever we can do as information collection from rural India. I think I will end my opening remarks with this.
So thanks, Nidhi. So the data that you collect as a part of Gaon Connection, is that available on some portal? How can the people who are listening to this session access that data. If you can share the link or something. So that is, and you also mentioned something that I didn't know, that you are covering 400 plus districts, which is really phenomenal. Are you, because there's a lack of rural data, which I completely agree to, and I also have worked with MOSPI during the years I was in government to understand the challenges of collecting rural data on an ongoing basis. Even for something that they have started to do at very quarterly basis, the periodic labor force survey, they do the urban survey only quarterly, and the rural numbers are released only on a yearly basis. So when it comes to rural, even the frequency in which the data is released is not the same as urban. But the model that you are following, in all this model, what happens is that someone from the urban area goes to the rural area to collect the data. I think the reason why you are so successful in this model is that you are not following that. So you don't have that additional baggage of travel and logistics of the person, that some Sahar person will come to a Gaon and then collect the data. So have you been in talks with the Ministry of Statistics to take your data and make it a part of their daily proceedings? You have to cover all districts as a part of it. That's done. But I think with that collaboration, private government partnership, that might be possible. Any discussions on that front?
Yeah, so Dr. Avik, just like one of the things that you said is very clearly, I mean, we don't want people for urban India to go and then cover rural India, which is why, and again, because we are a small organization, we don't have the capacity to send people from urban India to cover rural India, which is, we completely believe, let's use local resources, and they understand the language, all those, culture, everything is taken care of when a local person goes to interview people. Regarding collaboration, I think we've been dying to collaborate with organizations, with government. The reason for us to put out these 3 survey reports, and we actually sent it out also, the first report to a lot of MPs. I think we sent it to all the member of parliaments and all the government departments, and all is saying that, okay, we're doing something like this. But unfortunately, I don't know, there is so far no interest from the government departments to collaborate on something like this, which we are doing. And I think one must understand that these surveys, when you're talking of face-to-face surveys in 20 or 23 states of the country, they cost lakhs of money. There is only so much money that we can put into a survey. I mean, we would have loved to do more surveys during the second wave, because second wave in rural India was so bad. But unfortunately, I mean, we also did not have that. I mean, I am having lakhs of money at your disposal just to do a survey. It is difficult for us, and we really want government organizations or departments or some other organizations to come forward and actually collaborate, so that we can collect a lot more information from rural India, which is absolutely lacking. And we have a good system of even disseminating, because we have our own YouTube channel, we have our own media platform in English, Hindi, and we collaborate with a lot of other media organizations to help disseminate information. So it's not just you prepare a report and you upload it on your website and you feel you've done your job. No, that's just a part of the job. So I think if somebody collaborates, it would really, really be good, and we would love to do that.
Sure, thanks, Nidhi. So let us come to Rakesh now. Rakesh heads faculty and is doing a lot of phenomenal work. Again, we have listened a lot of praise about the southern and western states, and these are people like him who are driving the change in those states. Rakesh, over to you. It will be good if you can also introduce faculty to the audience and the good work that you are doing with Telangana.
Yeah, thanks, Avik. Thanks, all the other speakers, Nidhi, Soumya, and Sitansu. So my name is Rakesh. I founded Faculty. So at Faculty, we work on public information, public data, some policy-related work, and a lot of fact-checking related work. So we have a public-facing portal where we publish stories, data stories, a lot of fact-checking work. But another aspect of our organization is that we are very, very passionate about open data, about encouraging and pushing governments to put more and more data in the public domain. So that's how we started working with the government of Telangana. Since we're based in Hyderabad, so the idea was to encourage, ask the government to come up with a policy very similar to the national policy, and then at the same time, start pushing out data. So the whole thing started in around 2016, 2017. While the progress has been slow. I don't want to say that we've been able to achieve everything. While the progress has been slow, since it is probably the first time that most departments have been at the forefront of releasing at least certain data. I think there has been some welcome developments, at least in the last 1.5 years, which I'll also talk about. We've been talking about granular data and various facets of granular data now. Maybe from the point of view of villages where there is acute lack of data, somebody from the Northeast where data about certain states, certain districts is not available. I think we need to understand that the granular data plays a key role in many aspects. So it could be planning or informing policy actions for the government at a very top level. It could be journalistic reporting that a couple of other speakers are doing. A lot of times monitoring assessment, exposing corruption. We have seen businesses making strategic decisions based on data. And also give you 1 or 2 examples of that. Where non-profit organizations, NGOs, or civil society using this data to ensure that the beneficiaries gets their due from the government. So, and there are businesses that might get set up, where they're adding value to the existing data and making it more useful. While India Data Portal is non-profit and free to use, there could also be businesses. So coming back to Telangana, so we have more than I would say 600 data sets on the portal, some of which are granular and get updated almost every month. So I'll give you a list of a few of them and then get into the issues with granular data. So to start with the list of data sets, so on the Telangana Open Data Portal, which can be accessed from data.telangana.gov.in. So you can access daily weather data up to the block level. So the government has installed automated weather stations at the block level. So you can find these daily weather data updated every month. So there are around 700 odd weather stations. So that data is updated every month. Then you have vehicle registration data. So this comes from the transport department. So how many vehicles are registered right up to the vehicle level, of course, anonymized data. It doesn't have any personal details. Then vehicle fitness data, where fitness certificates are issued to a lot of these private vehicles which are used into transporting people. We also currently have the energy consumption data, which again could be a very good indicator of which area is doing well, right up to the lowest level of a unit of households. So it is in various categories of agriculture, domestic, industry, local body, street lighting consumption, EV charging stations, and all that. There's also data about 14,000 odd factories that are spread across the state of Telangana, along with the kind of main activity they're into. So these could be very, very small entities of with 1 people, 2 people, but they're into different kinds of work. Then there is also data related to the permissions given to industries to the single window system called the TSI pass at the state government level. Also the incentives that are extended to some of these industrial establishments. Then we have transit related GTFS data of the Hyderabad Metro as well as the MMTS. Then, like Avik was saying, there is also agricultural marketing data, daily data that comes from the market split in Telangana. There is also yield data. So a lot more data is in the pipeline, and hopefully in the next few months, we'll at least have 10 to 20 data sets. When I say data set, they're really, really granular data sets, which, where the data is available right up to the lowest level that the government collects. Hopefully about 15 to 20 such data sets every month will be available in the next few months. So while that is about Telangana, like I said, there are definitely issues. I mean, I'm not here to say that, everything is fine and the data is all well and good. So there are a lot of traditional problems, and we can't club all these problems together, because you need to understand that the varied kinds of data that the government or government agencies collect is through various means. So for example, there is transactional data collection. So data is collected whenever a transaction happens. It could be a financial transaction. It could be, for example, a tax transaction or a registration of a vehicle transaction, for example. So what our general experience has been, and at least my experience in the last 15 years in this field of understanding policy and data, is that there is the accuracy at the level of transactional data is much better compared to the accuracy at other levels, because transactional data in some ways brings revenue to the governments. So which is why there is an added incentive to collect this data properly or in good shape. Then there is also obviously data collection about developmental indices that Soumya was talking about SDGs. Again, here the problem is some of these data is not collected regularly or frequently. So you have NFHS, which is again a sample data. Census happens only once in 10 years. But there are some other data which, at least on the health aspects and some other aspects, where real-time data is getting generated, but the collection is not really, so to speak, automated or based on machines. So there is somebody out there who's actually entering data. Then we also have scheme level data collection, where you have large schemes with outlay of hundreds and thousands of crores. Could be, for example, the public distribution system or the Manrega. So these are schemes that are, could be at the state level or the central level. So we have scheme level data collection. While data is available on these MI systems up to the village level, there's no need for somebody to open up that data because the data is already available. Again, the problem here is, since it is somebody manually entering, the issues of quality remain. Statistics and demography related, socio-economic planning related. So we can't club all the granular data into one bucket. So we need to look at what kind of granular data is generating through which method, and which of them are when I say proper shape in terms of quality issues and in terms of accuracy issues compared to other data. I'll kind of stop here, Avik, and I think when the relevant questions come, we'll take.
Thanks, Rakesh. That was a nice introduction. You have done a lot of good work with Telangana, and we'll talk about some of them as we go forward. So if I can request the panelists to switch on their cameras, then the others can also see us as we speak through it. So now going on to, so let me start with Iro. You mentioned about the aspect that there's not good level of data available, and it's also confirmed by Soumya when you're working with Manipur. What do you think are the major reasons that data is not available for your state? What are the factors that are stopping them, your state government to share them? So because you talk to government officials and other people, what do you think is one of the major reasons why it is happening?
So one of the most major distinct reason, I think, is that is due to the nature of the conflict situation in the state. So when I say conflict, there are many, as you know, Manipur is under this AFSPA. Only 7 segments are not under AFSPA. So we can say that Manipur itself is under very, what do you call, very sensitive kind of situation. So when, like I mentioned, when there was this census for 2011, okay, so the most basic data itself, the number of population of the state, it was not, the authority was not able to release it officially because there was some abnormalities, So it is I think one of the major reason is the nature of the state itself. And the other thing is that I believe that they don't take this seriously, the authorities, because when we as a journalist try to do a story, they see with they view us with a bit of skepticism. So what will happen to that data? What will the narrative and as such? So what we are trying to what we are trying to do, we are trying to explain to them is that it is for the beneficial of all of us, the general public and the policymaker itself. Because in the absence of any data, we cannot formulate, the authorities cannot formulate a very effective plans or schemes, etc. So that is what we try to convey to them, and some of them agree and some don't. So yeah, that is a major reason, I think. Yeah.
Thanks, That is very helpful. Somo, if I can go over to you, and I'd particularly like to understand from the Northeast district index that you talked about, because you would have covered all the 7-8 states there in Northeast, and when you are collecting data, you told that some states had some good data and some didn't. What do you feel was the major reason where some states were maintaining good level of data? Because they are all very neighboring states. Some had the data, some didn't have that. And then you also went on and had workshops with them later to understand what were the reasons. So you have gone deep into not just seeing what was there, but also then going and speaking to the officials and understanding what the reason is. What do you think differentiates the states which have good data versus one? Ido mentioned about the sensitivity and those aspects as one of the ones which I correctly agree can be major reasons why they are there. Because if we know the reasons which are stopping people from sharing data, then other people in the ecosystem can also try and help them along those lines. So what do you think are the major reasons for that?
Thanks for the question, Avik. I think there are different ways of looking at it. So, for example, when we first, of course, were given this particular task, the immediate thing that came to us was that one of the things that happens differently in the Northeast, I would say, is that when in 2011, the census, there were around 86 districts in the Northeastern region. That increased to 120. Now, something which I sort of closely also follow is that, district bifurcations happen all the time in the rest of the country as well. From 640 to we are now over 750 districts. Simultaneously, there's a lot of effort, like when you see in some other parts of the country, to also immediately come up with, mechanisms to accommodate that sort of bifurcation. So that itself was a big challenge for us to sort of start from this to try and understand that what has happened to the statistical systems, when districts got bifurcated. And many of the times we saw many state departments still working on combined data sets, which do not, completely reflect the kind of development activities that are taking place. Secondly, sometimes it's also the leadership. So, for example, a state like Meghalaya, we have seen has very enthusiastically adopted technology akin to what we have seen probably half a decade ago with Andhra, Telangana, or even earlier with Karnataka. So there were certain pockets which are sort of motivated by the leadership as well, and that has played a major role. In fact, one of the major objectives of our Northeastern region district SDG index was to showcase this data gap. And as Iro said, that there are many factors which kind of demotivates. It could be sometimes even lack of demand for certain kind of data. And when I say lack of demand, I don't mean for the general populace, but within the the policy circles within the states, because remember, there are not only developmental challenges and topographical challenges in the Northeast, but other challenges related to conflict as well. So these are kind of the major reasons I would say that I can put my finger on. And the other is, historically as well, many of our national sample surveys do not report Northeast data separately. They do combined sampling, and those sample regions have not been expanded enough to capture even state level data. So let alone district level data, but even state level data, as I mentioned, SRS, NSSOs of the past. They're of course rectifying that. And even with NFHS as well, sometimes you would have many unweighted observations which can't be reported at the district level, which can be, let's say, for the rest of the states. So these are some of my thoughts.
No, that is very, very correct. And recently I was working with telecom data and trying to get the number of new subscribers every month. Northeast was one number. They was not broken up by the states.
That is in fact exactly an indicator we had to drop, because
yes.
we just didn't know how to capture it. Yeah.
Yes, our team has been. So it's also good that you mentioned about Meghalaya, because our institute, the Bharti Institute of Public Policy, is now working with the Meghalaya for working with the state of Meghalaya for the Meghalaya Legislative Fellowship. About I think 10 or 15 fellows who will work with the Meghalaya government legislators, and we will be also guiding them. And I think 3 or 4 out of them will be data fellows. So they will actually work on building the sort of open data portal or some data portal for Meghalaya. We don't know whether it's going to be open or not. I think that's for further discussion, but they will have that capability. So something that we have been working with the Meghalaya state now. It's very interesting to know that. So if I can go over to Nidhi. Nidhi, what do you think differentiates the good districts or good areas versus the bad? And if you can also share your views on Northeast, that will also be very interesting to hear from both those aspects.
Yeah, so I think because we've been talking so much about Northeast, I must also admit that we also, when we were conducting these 3 surveys, and I think out of the 8 Northeastern states, we've ensured that at least 4 or 5 get included in each of our these 3 surveys, because we knew it is difficult to collect data from there. So which is why we purposely made efforts to increase our network of community journalists in those states, to ensure that the data from those states get captured in our surveys also. But yes, there are we faced huge challenges also, because like you said, there's a problem of net, because all our surveys are done on smartphones through these apps. So in a lot of areas, when our surveyors, these people were going, there was a problem of feeding that data, because there was a problem of network, kahin mobile nahi ka tower nahi hai, or you have rains. So, it's impossible. The terrain is so bad that it's difficult to reach there to collect that kind of information. So we definitely did face issues while collecting data from some of the Northeastern states. As far as good state or bad state, I mean, I don't know. I mean, what do you mean by that question? What's like
someone who has good data
okay,
available in the public domain, not for the performance of a state, particularly
okay,
data perspective. Yes.
Okay, so I think definitely the experience with Southern India in most of the things, whether it is on nutrition or any other government program or access to data is very good. It's very when we were working on some malnutrition story, and I remember it was very easy for us to access data at district level on different malnutrition parameters from southern states, whether it was Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Kerala and all. But definitely when we come to maybe even the Indo-Gangetic belt, a lot of states have extremely poor data. A lot of our stories, like we were working on a story on fluoride, and we wanted to know how fluoride and arsenic have contaminated our groundwater, but it is so difficult to get the latest data. Like we were looking at UP 75 districts, and I mean, we had a hard time to collect latest data because some of the data was 2017-18. Then we're looking at parliament questions to find out, okay, if has any minister answered. Now the answers will also tell you that, okay, in Uttar Pradesh, so many habitations have this. Now, beyond that, I don't know whether in this block, how many villages have high fluoride level. And what the problem also happens is sometimes the data which is there with, say, the drinking water department wasn't matching with some other data. Like, it will tell me that the fluoride level here is say 5 mg per liter, but somewhere else, same village, some other department or some other ministry data is giving me a completely different picture. So it becomes very difficult that, which data do you use? And so those are the challenges, I think, which we regularly face.
Yes, that is very interesting, Nidhi, that you mentioned about that, because when you take multiple data and try to put them one over another and see what is happening, I think that is where a lot of the discrepancies come up in the data. So we are working on a different project called India Pulse, where we take this data from different sources and work with the state government, and also these are not public data, public dashboards that we create. So basically, we take data from multiple sources and then try and map them together to find out areas of distress in the state, and then give this insight, share this insight with the state government officials. We have been working on this with in Himachal Pradesh and in Jharkhand. We see some of these things become very prominent. So yes, good that you state out this issue. So Sitansu, if I can go next to you, we hear a lot about people in the Northeast looking for support on data. What is your take on that? On how do you see the similar trend that has been discussed in the session here? What sort of people say they reach out to you? It was also nice to see that Sikkim was the first state to adopt the open data. So it will be good to hear what, if you are working with any of the states, and any maybe just differentiation between I told states which are good on the are more developed on the open data aspect as compared to the others.
Yeah, this is really nice that Sikkim is one of the first states, those who have created their own policy also on the basis of the national policy. And this is due to one of the MPs in Sikkim at that time. He was quite interested in that, and he was put his efforts to take it forward, and gradually the open data platform was also created. However, after that, this platform is not maintained by the state government. We have regular interaction with them also, and we have requested them. Couple of officers were got transferred, so we asked them to refill their posts. At least they should have the continuous flow. And the second thing is, we also push the concept of data by default, so that at least, let's say, they will have APIs, and we ask them also that we will help you in creating the API, so that there should not be any human intervention. Your data keeps on flowing. Let's say the officer got transferred, then also you'll get the data. So that is some challenges are there in the state level to and everywhere will not get somebody like Rakesh. This is just a joke. Apart from that, because Rakesh and his team is really has good technical know-how, that in many states these kind of facilities are not available with them. So we are there to help them. However, in many cases we are not getting support from the state itself, because that is not their primary mandate. So that is one of the aspects in that. Meanwhile, recently we had a discussion with Assam also, because Assam has adopted the central policy long back in 2014 itself. They have a gazette notification. Even when recently we had a chat with them, and we told them like, you have adopted the policy. Even they don't have that document, so we shared that document with them, and they have shown some interest in that. And meanwhile, some of our community members, like if you know, Gaurav and his team is already working in with Assam government. So we are pushing on those lines actually, and we told them like, we'll give you a SaaS instance, and we can set up a SaaS instance for the state. You just have to make it sure that you are keep on adding data in that, and you have to make it rich. So talks are on those lines. Assam is one of the northeastern states, and apart from that, we have a chat with Tripura also recently, to push that. Even they don't have a policy, so we are helping them in terms of how they could create their own policy, or else they could adopt the central policy. If they could adopt either of the options, we can good enough to go with them. Apart from that, we have already working with MP government recently. MP, Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh, we did 3 workshops with these 3 states, if they could adopt it. And recently we get very positive response from Madhya Pradesh. So hopefully in next 2-3 months, we'll have closed Madhya Pradesh, and we'll have a SaaS instance for them.
Thank you, Sitan. Thank you. So Rakesh, over to you. So again, maybe the same question. What do you think differentiate between some of the states which are willing to do it versus not? And let me also go to the second question about how can organizations like yours help these states, or is there a roadmap or a guide that you can provide that they can embark on this data journey. This is primarily meant for the government officials, that they can make the data available.
Yeah, I think first, the first question, what differentiates states? I think the one is obviously history, the legacy of where the government itself is adapted using technology for quite some time, and thankfully some of the, like everybody else was saying, southern and western states, I think, or at least forward thinking, and they were using technology. What also differentiates, I think, is some way political will. At least at the top level, there is sanction and people are willing to do this. Now, people also should not be led into believing that every bit of data, just because there is a policy, you will have every bit of data accessible. See, at the end of the day, it is for the departments and those who are manning the departments, they are the owners of the data. It is their decision. But as enablers, people like us or anybody else, our job is to impress upon them the importance of data sharing and how. See, a lot of times, I think the general discourse on data sharing happens more from just the citizens' perspective. I mean, how will it be useful to citizens? How will it be useful to journalists? I think while these are very important, I think we should also take the third one, which is to say, opening up data is actually self-serving. I mean, for the government itself, it could be very, very useful. How the private sector could play a part, the economy could boom. For example, once the vehicle registrations data was opened up, we had at least 2 startups who were chasing us on a monthly basis, saying, when are you going to give us next month's data? So when we inquired with them, what are you doing with this and all that, they said they were doing some consulting for fintech firms where they were mapping out areas based on, of course, since there's no proper data in India to map out areas based on their relative economic strength in terms of rich, poor. They were using this as a proxy. Now, because this is very granular and gives up to the RTO level, so I mean, it should not be purely looked at from the perspective of it is actually useful to the government. That is how I think we should impress upon governments. So it could be useful in terms of self-correction. If data is not accurately being collected, if there are quality issues, it could also, so a lot of times it's not just negative stories in the press. I mean, once data is put out, and if certain government is doing well, I'm sure that story will also come out. So I think it is to impress upon governments those 2 things, and also always start with the low-hanging fruits. I mean, there could be a lot of data with the government which quote unquote is treated as innocuous. I mean, this is harmless data, so to speak. So a lot of officials we interact with quite often come back saying, I'm not very sure of the authenticity of the data. What if it goes out? What if there will be issues? I mean, these are all not issues that are going to be solved in a day, because this is a journey, a process. It's a self-correcting process, evolution. So low hanging, I would say 2-3 things. One, if somebody wants to go impress upon the states, one, tell them how it will be useful to the state. Don't talk about citizens, journalists. That will anyway happen. I mean, the moment data is out, the primary beneficiaries will be the citizenry and the reporting circle. How it can benefit the government. Then target low-hanging fruits. I mean, what data is readily available, what data can be put out, what data is in a readily available shape, and then slowly start building successful case studies on how data sharing is actually helping governments and helping people at large, helping even image of the governments. So, for example, today it's not just about having data in open formats which can be used by people, let's say, who know technology, but some states have also started toying with the idea of coming up with something I would call it as the Right to Information 2.0, which is public information portals. Rajasthan has a very successful Jan Suchna portal. Karnataka has recently launched a public information portal, which is called the MeitY Kanaja. At least 10 to 15 departments have put out their data. Again, not in a way that anybody and with the technology prowess would use, but common man. I mean, the intent is common man. So go, you want information about any scheme, you will get it. You want data about any scheme, you'll get it. When I say any, well, of course, caveats that whatever government is disclosing, but I think the entire data discourse should spawn 2-3 different varieties of initiatives in the country. One aimed at purely public, how at an individual level it could be used, so that because at the end of the day, entitlements is a huge issue. Unless the entitlements correct beneficiary, that is also the intent of the government. And the second is, how do we encourage monitoring assessment, which is journalistic purpose, which is also encouraging startups use this data so that economy can grow. So I think these two have to be looked at, and obviously when these two happen, the government will automatically benefit from it.
Sure. Thanks very much for that. So Nidhi, if I can come over to you, what sort of help do you think you do require to make rural data collection done on a more regular basis? Maybe the help can come to either Gaon connection or maybe to the ecosystem. What sort of intervention or help would you think?
See, right now, like I said, Dr. Avik, it's all about financially supporting this initiative that we have started. Because as far as human power is concerned, as far as training these people is concerned to conduct these surveys, as far as having a data team which can collate this data, analyze it, and put it out, in form of just raw data and also in form of graphics. The whole challenge right now is because this exercise requires a lot of financial resources, and COVID has hit all of us pretty bad. So how do we, we thinking of doing another survey? So we're just trying to collect some resources so that we can do a survey like this. But right now, to be very honest, it's all about having enough financial resources to be able to do this kind of exercise in a regular basis. Because rest of the stuff we've cracked how one does it. But the idea is that how do you raise resources to be able to conduct these rural surveys?
Thanks. That is very interesting. If I can go over to you, when you see that there's a lack of data in some of the states, do you provide recommendation for filling up those data? Is there any timelines that goes from NITI Aayog for putting the data in proper shape? Because a recommendation from NITI Aayog would carry a lot of value, and states will take it quite seriously, that they have to put the data systems in place, and any recommendation that you provide on, say, open data that will help you in various index creation and also the entire ecosystem.
Right. Thanks, Avik. So during our consultations, when we put out the results of the index, one of the things that constantly comes up is the data source that we have chosen. And many a times we see this sort of a peculiar phenomenon where a lot of the central ministry data is actually also provided by the different state departments. And because, of course, apart from, providing this data to the central ministries, the department officials have a core functioning as well, which is of implementation. So they also see it as an additional sort of work, which is why many a times it does happen that the kind of real progress that has actually happened on the ground is not adequately reflected in many of the central ministry sort of forums and portals. So there we of course recommend one of the things, which is that we recommend the planning departments and the DES and the planning and finance department to kind of keep a tab on all of this, because there is a need not only of course to reconcile the data, so to speak, but also to continuously monitor in a manner which is also useful to them, something which Rakesh was speaking about. The second thing that we also do is we encourage states to build their own SDG frameworks for their own districts. Now, because we are doing a national ranking, the kind of indicators we are looking at is primarily to see what is how far away are we from achieving the various targets of the SDG agenda. So they're very outcome based, whereas an information which will be useful to officials, district administrators, or even at the Gram Panchayat level are high frequency indicators, which is generated by the states themselves. So we provide them various sort of like recommendations specific to which are the areas they lack in. So for example, a state like Karnataka recently is looking to do a multidimensional poverty index survey, because you can derive the index, the multidimensional poverty index insights from the NFHS data, but that's only available at the district level. And they want it to be far more granular up to the block level and if possible further down. So we kind of provide some sort of technical know-how, etc., to do so. Secondly, when it comes down to recommendations on sharing data, again, remember Avik, like as NITI Aayog, we are just enablers. States themselves have their own mandates. And most of the times we see that there is a it's mostly comes from the leadership. When leadership impresses upon monitoring, that's when the system down below also kind of is forced to adopt as to, for the lack of a better term, progressive measures and technology. And I think I really like this kind of bucketing which Rakesh did to the kind of data we're talking about. We're talking about survey reports on one side, we're talking about scheme indicators, we're talking about private let's say demand-led indicators, which are like the transport indicators. So in all of these sort of cases, that leadership from the state governments and ministers or officials, it matters a lot. So Sikkim is a great case, which Tanshu just said, that it was led by a particular MP, but it didn't kind of, go ahead. And so I think it can start off with leadership, and then, as Rakesh said, impress upon the importance of it, data for data itself. I think that's the kind of thing we are looking at. Thank you.
No, that is very helpful and interesting to understand. Yes, I think leadership is one of the very important factors that can push and drive that. But the challenge that we face is that we cannot completely rely upon leadership because we don't know when it's going to happen. And then that is where it is often helpful if, say, some of the other elements in the ecosystem can help them in bridging some of the gaps. I think the district level SDG index is something very interesting that I think you can throw more light on that. I have heard about 2 states that have done it. I think one, Himachal, where we had done a little bit of help on that front, and Rajasthan. Actually, the guy who actually worked in Rajasthan on creating it has joined our team. That's how I know about it. But I think that's a very good measure where the states can take it to the next level and implement it and go at a nitty-gritty level. Now, what you mentioned about Karnataka is even more impressive, because they are going beyond district into blocks and village level, and that is exactly the type of thing that will be helpful to measure things and to take actions when necessary. Thanks for that. If I can come to you, what sort of help do you think would you need from the ecosystem, both from government and private bodies, like say Rakesh or anyone else's organization? So what sort of help you need? Do you think coming up with a framework or a portal, or say convincing the government officials and telling them that they need to make the data available will be helpful? What do you think will help it in your ecosystem?
Yeah, so I think both the private and the public, the state government, they have a big role, because first of all, like Soumya has mentioned previously, I think leadership is very important. I think they have to be very proactive, and they have to let's say very proactive in this kind of new technology and this new, let's say they are trying to come up with a new scheme. So they can basically, I mean, if the data is not available, then that scheme may not be beneficial to the public at all without a very authentic data. So I think they should be very proactive in this collection of authentic data and all, and putting out openly to the public for all the stakeholders. And the other thing is that the private NGOs and organizations, I think they can, apart from the data that has been collected by the state government, they have a role of filling in dots, that were left out. It may be positive, the data may be positive or negative, but I think they have a big role in filling those gaps. And we as a journalist, we don't, I mean, well, we are not experts in this field, but we see those data and we consult with experts and try to form a narrative and what is the data telling us, and we try to disseminate those information. That is our job actually. So we would like to see more organizations working at the very ground level, so that we can have this open data. Yeah.
Thanks, Hiro. That is quite interesting to hear about that. So I'd like to open the floor for some questions from the audience. If you have any questions, feel free to write the questions to us, and so that I can ask them. So let me take the first question, which has been asked by Danish. So he tells that my common question is everyone that as still there are some hindrances in collecting data from ground level, whether in terms of urban local issues, ground water issues, plastic pollution, or any other issue. How do you see the intervention of citizens in the approach by collecting the data and cross-checking so that it can be maintained transparency between citizens and policymakers? Also, the granularity will be the point level data and duration for this daily basis. So basically what he's talking about is crowdsourcing some of these data points from citizens. So any of the panelists can take it. Have you heard about anything where citizens are putting in some of the data points and reporting on a platform, which are being then taken, cross-checked by others, and maybe then picked up by journalists and taken out for reporting? So anyone can take a call.
I think, Dr. Avik, I would just respond because citizen science initiatives are becoming very common now. And a lot of this work is actually happening because we've also been reporting on it. A lot of, at least I think Kerala, if I'm correct, is one of the states where citizens, a science initiative has led to they have produced this atlas of birds in the state. So purely driven by citizens who are into bird watching. And so I think these kind of initiatives are happening, and they're also well accepted. So I think it is happening, at least as far as wildlife and all is concerned. I'm very sure that these kind of citizens initiatives are being done, atlases are being prepared, and these are well respected also. So maybe we could extend it to other areas as well.
I think your journalists are also ground level. A lot of citizen journalists who have now turned into journalists at Gaon Connection. So they are also playing a dual role. I understand a lot of your journalists in previous discussions with your organization are teachers or Anganwadi workers and people of that nature who do not have a formal training in either data collection or journalism, and they are doing a dual role. I think this is the type of things where other people in the ecosystem can also join hands to provide more data, and that can also help in the entire ecosystem. Rakesh, you had any points?
No, I mean, not really different, but yeah, crowdsourcing will become important because at the end of the day, what currently the government collects as its mandate could be inadequate to address the new and upcoming challenges. So a lot of times, government may not even have the mandate or may not even collect certain data sets. So even if where it collects, there could be issues of accuracy, comprehensiveness. I think citizen source, crowdsourcing of data is definitely important, but I think it has to reach a level where the government is forced to adopt and then issue a mandate, set up standards, because at the end of the day, crowdsourcing alone, will not help us in policy action. I think it has to somewhere lead to institutionalization of such data collection so that constantly that evolution suggestions can go on from the civil society. Crowdsourcing definitely is important, especially in uncovered areas where whether government is not doing it or there is no mandate. But I think the efforts have to be, once the crowdsourcing is done, to institutionalize it in some form.
Thanks, Rakesh. So anyone else has any question, please either type it in the chat or you can raise your hand and I can allow you to ask your questions. Meanwhile, there is a question on from Nita on how can we get village maps and land tenure records for district and block level. Is there a plan to make this accessible? So anyone has understanding on land record data and how they can be made accessible? Maybe Sitansu from Open Data can have it, or anyone else.
We have some data, but we don't have the SEP files in open format to share. We have some data sets, but we don't have the SAFE files. SAFE files are with the some of the GIS and other divisions, but they are not reluctant to share them on open data platform till yet actually. But some of the states have actually. Recently, we had a meeting with Karnataka. They have a separate system of their GIS data, and they are now releasing them in open format also. All the SAFE files of Karnataka, district level up to the village level actually, for the map data and other related data sets around that.
Okay, thank you. There is another question from Nita. What is the status of Tamil Nadu with respect to making open data available?
Tamil Nadu has a dedicated data portal now, that is tn.data.gov.in, and they have a dedicated team also. In Tamil Nadu, ELCOT is an organization, state level organization. They are leading that PMU, and they have appointed chief data officers in almost all of their departments now, and they are regularly updating up to district level handbooks also. Right now, again, these are all statistical data. They are not very micro level data. However, at least district level statistics are available. They are uploading all those data for the time being. So you can check that out, tn.data.gov.in.
Yes, I have made that available. So while we wait for others for any questions, Nidhi, when you talked about the data that has been collected at the grassroots level, is that available as a data to download for people? How do other people access it?
So the original data files, the Excel sheets and all, they are right now not, I mean, the report and all the findings are available in the report, which is open source, but the data sheets that are with us are right now not put on a website. But if somebody wants an access, can always write to us and we can share. That's what we have been doing. Because these are huge data files and, I mean, we haven't put them on a website. The report is all there. But if somebody really wants data sheets, can just write to us and we can share the data sheets also.
Okay. But do you have a plan of putting creating open data portal where you host all of this data, like say data.gov.in?
We have a lot of plans, but let's see how things shape up. I think there's no dearth of planning that, we want to plan. I mean, we launched a separate website on Gaon Connection Insights, where we're putting out all these reports and everything. So we absolutely believe in keeping all of our data open. But I think I think there are a lot of plans happening. I don't want to comment right now, but yes, I mean, if it is feasible at our end, we would absolutely love to do that, which is why we've been sharing these reports also, just sending it out free to people to just read and be informed.
Yes, no, that is very, very interesting to know about them. Yes, there is some more comment. So there is a very interesting question that has come up, which we face in all data discussion. I have found disparity in the data found from Indian sources and international sources. Why so? And which is more reliable? There is a question by Nisha.
So if I may take that question, Nisha, I think there are 2-3 considerations here. One is most international publications follow calendar years. We follow financial years. So first look up on that if that is a difference. Then methodologies could be very different. So calculation methodologies could be very different. And 3 sources. I mean, who are they relying on? Are they relying on government sources? So obviously when an international data source is taking data from another source, it may not match with the government. The government, it is not the government data source. So reliability, etc. I wouldn't make a quality statement saying international or national, but it will, I think it should be case to case depending on what kind of data and what is the methodology and who are they taking the data from.
Yes, it's also in a lot of the cases, the international bodies methodology also have to be looked into when you look into this data, because they might take a small section of data, maybe only the rural area, maybe only the urban areas based on which they are taking the data. So it's good to compare the methodology of the data before you go into comparing the numbers. So that will be my a small comment as an academic and as a researcher to look into that aspect. People jump into the numbers directly, often first, but I think give some attention. Once you give attention, little bit of attention on the methodology, possibly the differences will come out clearly. So we have another question from Danish. The recent move by government in liberalizing map making process, what sort of government policy should come up in that aspect? So Sitansu, Rakesh, anyone on map?
There is recently a policy from DST also related to maps and GIS data. That policy is still is already notified, and there are lots of consultation are going on with various stakeholders. I think once that policy is in place, we'll have more map and GIS related data will be in the pipeline. So lots of liberalization are going on around those data sets. Recently, that policy, as you can check that out also in the DST website, and recently they have a couple of stakeholders meeting also. It's basically related to map and GIS related data sets.
Good. So I think we are at the close of the hour. So maybe I will give 2 minutes to each of you for your closing remark, and also request Arushi to come and make her closing remarks, and she has some surprises also for us in store. So I'll start with Rakesh. Maybe you can start, and we can go in the reverse order. Rakesh, maybe a couple of minutes of closing remarks.
Yeah, thanks, Avik. Thanks for organizing this. I think so. We have to go to a stage where if granular data is available, there is certainty to data, and like I said, it's a constant evolution. You should not expect everything on day one. Engage with the state, engage with to ensure that constant data is constantly data is released. On the other aspect, I think there is also a need to impress upon governments, both the central and various state governments, on which I've been saying for quite some time now, that so we have a serious lack of a cadre of data entry operators, because if you look at it, except for transaction related data, most of the data is manually entered for lakhs of crores of rupees. Policy decisions based on the data entered by these people. So I think there is a need to create a separate cadre of data entry operators, permanent cadre within the governments, to train them on data collection, train them on data entry, because it is a very specialized job these days now, to understand what it is. So that has to be done, and also that whole culture of data sharing has to be encouraged by all. I think more and more the one state does it now, that there is a competition of sorts between states. I am hopeful that one state does it, more and more states will do it. We should also look at data availability, data sharing in two different aspects. Like I was earlier saying, it should be the public aspect, where it has to be in a format that is easily usable, like the information portals that Karnataka and Rajasthan have experimented with, and on the other side, where machine readable formats that can be easily be used by anybody. I mean, it could be businesses, it could be NGOs, it could be others. So I'm definitely hopeful. We may not be seeing the fruits of what all has been is being done in the last few years, but I'm definitely hopeful of the future.
Thanks, Rakesh. If I can go over to Nidhi.
Thanks, Dr. Avik. I think the good thing I feel is that a lot of journalists are also taking interest in data, and data journalism is really becoming a big thing. I think 20 years back, when we started off as journalists, data was something we never looked at. There was nobody to help us understand the data. There was nobody to help us tell that if you're writing a story on air pollution, what are the different kind of parameters you should look at, and how do you read these permissible limits and all of that. But I'm so glad now I see that most stories that are done now have some bit of data. Journalists are no more seen as lesser mortals, where scientists will not speak to us saying that you guys know nothing, so we will not speak about data with you. So I think that's a good thing, and I'm glad that in Data Conclave we actually invited two journalists to speak about their concerns around data. So I think it's a good beginning, and I think that's it.
Thank you. So we had a whole one full day data conclave last year, and we had two panels which were only for journalists. So journalists are our prime focus for India Data Portal. Shomo, over to you.
Thank you, Avik. I think one aspect, of course, like we can also briefly touch upon is that we've spoken a lot about sort of vertical geographical granularity. But at the same time, there's also a push from, thanks to the SDGs, also international bodies, citizens and journalists led, that data is also disaggregated across different groups who are vulnerable, towards whom policy can be targeted. So I see a lot of encouragement in terms of new sort of surveys coming up. For example, the longitudinal aging study in India, which was done by the same agency, IIPS, which does the NFHS, and also NSSO doing something which is at least a decade ago. It took some time, but Time News in India was released, which is so important for gender statistics. So I think there's also a lot of focus which is required to not only look at data across geographical strata, but also across vulnerable groups as well, to kind of truly reach out and ensuring we leave no one behind. So I think I'll end with that. Thank you, Avik.
Yes, that's a very important point. I think we have not spoken about that aspect at all, how we can expand the horizon of data. So good, if I can go over to Ido.
Yeah, so I think more journalists need to be trained as a basic level of this, a basic level to understand the data and how do we interpret those data, because as Nidhi has mentioned before, whenever we do stories, to get some traction, we need some reliable sources. So that may be the traditional sources, and or nowadays most of them are based on this data. So I believe that more journalists will, I think many are becoming interested in this data journalism, and I believe that more will come up. And yeah, because at the end of the day, that data, the journalists are going to interpret or to write the story, and the public need to understand that what is the data telling, what is the data trying to say. I think the job of the journalist is to try and convey that in such a manner that the public may understand very well. So yeah, so yeah, there will be my closing remarks.
Yes, thanks, Ido. Shitanshu, if I can go over to you for your closing remarks.
Thank you, Avik. It's really nice discussion, and I totally agree with all the panelists with their final remarks, starting from Nidhi to Iro, Soumya, and Rakesh also. Rakesh knows the government setup, so he was there with the policy and other related activity. Similarly, if you see for the last 7-8 years, we have dedicated desks in media houses also to deal with data and data journalism kind of activities. Similarly, if you see, we have fact checking and other related activities are also somewhere related to data only. So the more data is in the ecosystem, and more decentralized portals are also created, like you have a decentralized portal. Similarly, let's say civic data labs have their all sectoral, very sectoral specific data sets. So what we are planning now also, apart from open data, we have many closed data sets and other related activities are going on in this ecosystem, and outputs are numerous. Many people have created many good applications, or else some good data modeling are there in the market, which could be used and reused and redistributed also. So in the longer run, we are planning a bigger umbrella kind of activity where all these platforms, all these individuals, all these institutional mechanism could be taken into consideration, and this big umbrella could be a single point access for all kind of data available in India. So we are in the planning, still in the planning stage, and we will definitely take inputs from all the panelists and community members and other stakeholders in this ecosystem in the future. So we are hopeful that we'll go on the right direction.
Thanks, Shitanshu. So thanks everyone. So let me now pass it over to Associate Director, Bharti Institute of Public Policy, Arushi Jain, for some surprise at the end and for her closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Avik, for this. Thank you, dear panelists. It was such an interesting and informative discussion that we had today. Very relevant to the times we are in, where we are talking, and you all have been talking of data as gold and data as platinum and so on and so forth. But the discussion today was around states and the initiatives that have been there at the government level to make data more accessible. So right now we are at the right space. Of course, as just now Rakesh had put across, that it is an evolutionary stage and it will take its own course of time. But the trends look very promising. They are very, very, we are at the stage where everyone is looking for open data. We are looking for credible, reliable data sources. And there are questions around the reliability of data. That is the first and the most important thing. Journalists are becoming a part of this entire initiative, and media being the very important fourth pillar of our democracy. If media gets involved with data stories, data-backed stories, instead of just the anecdotal kind of stories that have been reported in the past, I think we have a very bright future to look at. So the overall discussions today were very invigorating. Right from the issues on data sharing to data collection and the granularity of data, the kind of aspects around increasing horizons across of data, making it more inclusive, thinking about data on various aspects, including, I think gender didn't come up here particularly, but I'll like to bring that also into focus, is something that is the need of the day. Everyone here, our esteemed panel, they've been doing wonderful work. Nidhi, congratulations to you for what Gaon Connections brings in. At the grassroots, you are working in transforming, from, it's like a bottom-up approach. So really, really great work. Rakesh has been doing amazing work at Factly. We've been in touch and we've been partnering on a lot of events with him. So amazing work there, Rakesh. For others, our Government of India, NITI Aayog, MeitY have been involved a lot with data and open data in a big way. And this entire initiative will go a long way. Ministry of Statistics and Government of India has also contributed a lot to this transformation. The overall purpose of India Data Portal as such has been to work with journalists. So when we had conceived this idea 3 years ago of building a data portal, the overall perspective was to partner with journalists, to make journalists our ambassadors so that they can come up with data and convenient and easy visualizations that they get through India Data Portal. But it's so heartening to see that, as we are evolving in this ecosystem, there are so many partners around us who are also doing similar things. Iro mentioned about the challenges that journalists face in the Northeast in particular, and there were a lot of discussions around Northeast in this today's panel. Of course, those challenges are there, but now because discussions have started happening, we are on the right track. So with these words, I do hope that, when we come together for the next Open Data Conclave, probably in a 6 months' time, we will have many new things to share. We will have some kinds of laws already enacted for data privacy. That's still ongoing. And there'll be more to talk about open data at the state and the central levels, and what all private sector, civil society are doing in this open space. So also along with this, I have an announcement to make, which Avik was referring to as a surprise. So on behalf of the India Data Portal team, I'm going to announce a competition for journalists today. This is the best news article competition using data and visualizations. So we will be giving a time of 3 months to journalists to publish their articles in any of the newspapers. We will have two separate competitions. Today we are launching the print media competition, and subsequently we will also be planning an online media competition. But today's competition that is being launched is a news article competition. I will be sharing my screen here just for everyone's reference. So this is what we'll be launching today. This is the best news article competition in all the languages, which include English, Hindi, Bengali, Marathi, Oriya, and Telugu. Along with that, other vernacular languages where data and visualizations are used. And of course, if you are using India Data Portal, you can submit all your stories on the India Data Portal itself. There will be a good guideline that will be circulated to our entire database. Our journalists in network. We have a lot of ambassadors with us who are journalists who promote India Data Portal. So this is a competition for each and every one, where you can see that there are not just the top 3 prizes in every language, but also along with that, there will be a lot of consolation prizes in order to encourage young and budding journalists to write stories using data. So you can submit your entries by the 31st of December, and we will be announcing the first set of prizes in January 2022. So we do hope to get a wonderful response on this best news article competition, but the overall perspective is that journalists start using data and visualization as they report. So with this, I think, Avik, we are exactly on time, and thank you so much. It was an amazing response from participants for the Open Data Conclave, and thank you so much, our panelists, Rakesh, Iro, Nidhi, Soumya, and Sitansu, for being here and for the wonderful discussion that we had today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye.